it.
Mhm.
So what's on our mind right now? Well, right now is AI and can it replace the SDR team? And we're actually seeing companies actually take the leap to doing that. Um, I think now the technology is there. And maybe we had some,
Well,
well, is it there?
yeah, that's
Is
the
the
question.
question. Yeah,
Yeah.
is the question. I think, we were joking about it before, but I was trying to think, oh, like what was the first intro to like something that was trying to replace SDRs? And we were talking about Conversica, which is kind of a blast in the past because I was like using that like almost 10 years ago and they're way ahead of their time. But now I think it's more like with the technology out there, maybe it is more of a reality
Hmm.
of like these tools are really valid for replacing the whole SDR team instead of just augmenting the team. So yeah, but I think Charlie, maybe you can give a little bit of context on what we're seeing with clients, and we want to talk through the implications or
Hmm.
things that we would tell clients to think about if they are choosing to go down this route.
Okay. Yeah. So we are seeing at least 3 clients who are exploring this, and 2 of them actually did,
Yeah.
remove the SDR function from their org. And there's other clients that are kind of discussing kind of something similar, or can they augment them? But what's really interesting to me is a year ago when we started really exploring a lot of the AI use cases and stuff like that, I started recording videos, we did a few podcasts on it. We would, theorize that maybe this could be the case one day, but now actually it seems to be happening. I
Yeah.
know, you mentioned the technology is there, and in a way, yes, it is. Like it can do it, but like I guess the question is, what are the implications, and can it do it well enough to really make that move?
Mm-hmm.
I would say kind of the TLDR is, you know, maybe ish. Like I wouldn't. The recommendation isn't to just go and kind of remove the SDR function tomorrow. Definitely not. And we'll go through some of those implications as to why that might be the case. But it is something. Depending on the size of the company, it could fit you. It could
Yeah.
fit you. So like, it's an it depends thing,
Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
Xander was here, his sign in the background would say it depends. It'd be flashing. So
So what's the first
yeah,
thing
first
that we should think
implication.
about?
So this is in the category of the actual customer experience, the buyer experience.
Mm-hmm.
How much can you trust letting AI loose on potentially really valuable prospects or your customers? And there's kind of 2 categories that we see when we think about the SDR function of like how you could leverage AI to do this. There's one which is, there's a conversational AI tool that is kind of empowered to have conversations back and forth, trained on your data, and will be able to like answer questions, respond back and forth, wait until there's a meeting, and maybe at some point there's a handover to a human. There's another category where it's more that AI is there as essentially a research assistant. They're helping you gather information on your
Yeah.
prospects, get the data into your systems, help you craft emails. And maybe one email goes out kind of automated, but then, if they respond, then a human gets brought in the loop. It's more just to like kind of get attention, kind of like a outreach sales loft on steroids. It's like you're still sending it out of an email sequencing tool, still kind of coming from a human. It's just AI helped you get there, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it's not coming out of a sequencing tool.
Right.
Sometimes it is connecting it to one of those like rotating mailbox tools or something like
Right.
that. And yeah.
The one that I think has the most implications to the customer experience is when you are setting it loose, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is an example. I don't think you saw this on LinkedIn where. So I think there was a marketer. I think she works maybe for Sendoso or something. She was posting about how she put the screenshot of the email, and essentially the email, I guess I'm losing some of the details there, but I believe some family member had passed away recently. Maybe she had posted about it, and the email that she got was obviously written by an AI because it was like, this tool could help you in your grieving process.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah.
That is brutal, right? That is just
Oh my God.
not good.
Bad.
And I think earlier, you made a point before we were recording about, is AI equal to kind of like, out of college junior SDRs?
Yeah.
A human's not going to make that mistake.
Yeah.
Right? A human will not, like a 10-year-old, I think, probably wouldn't make that mistake. So but AI can. So I think that's where it really setting things loose and being able to have that capability is where the customer experience, there is a risk.
Yeah.
And then the comparable is in like maybe it's support, right?
Yeah.
Where they're letting AI loose is on these kind of low level support tickets that are just kind of easy to handle. I think the same thing has to happen in sales. It's like you don't just go, okay, handle everything, right? You need to find kind of like the use cases that have kind of a low, like if something goes wrong, it's not going to make a big difference, right? It has to kind of have to have a low impact if there's hallucinations or something an issue. But yeah, I think the customer experience is a really important thing to think about, because if you mess that up, right? If you send that email to that person about their grieving and come buy my product, right? That person's never going to buy your product.
No. No, I know. I think that this is one of the things with AI is like I think we still need guardrails. And I would say that just in general, like, and also like if you think about training and why that's important for a human, well, like think about how well trained like your AI needs to be to make sure that it has the right tone and relevance and things like that. And so that's why I feel like right now where I feel like I'm more comfortable is AI being able to be an augment to making all those tasks that made outbound tedious, like, or even inbound, but like research, verification on the person. And then yes, maybe some emails, but I feel like you still need someone to kind of manually like review that, at least for now, until you can maybe get to a point where you really feel confident in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, yes, you want to be efficient. Yes, you want to minimize costs, but what are you trying to do? You're trying to sell, you're trying to close a deal. And so you can't have a crappy experience or be sending like
Yeah.
emails like that. And people are looking for it, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
before
because people
people,
know, right?
people,
Like this is
yeah,
no. I mean, that was her whole post. It was like this
yeah,
is where AI's gone wrong, right?
yeah. And so if anything, if you want to stand out, it might be like, don't have your emails look like AI created. We might even have to go even more like one on one, but like, I don't know. It's a bit
I mean,
hard.
that's a good point as well. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole other question, which is when you think about outbound, is high volume outbound even the right goal, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're trying to scale outbound using AI tools, is that even good? Because there's an argument that high volume outbound is never going to work anyway. It's such a low converting activity. I mean, we talked about this stuff on the podcast loads before. It's so low converting. You're going to be ending up in the spam folder so often. You're going to have a lot of potentially these customer experience issues, even like ones that aren't as bad as that the one I brought up, but it could just be someone just gets annoyed because you just spammed them, right? Even
Yeah.
with a good email.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think the customer experience is definitely, and I agree with you. You know, at this stage, I think the implications around letting something loose
Yeah.
is pretty could be pretty dire. But you know, maybe you can experiment with it, and the more the co-pilot, the assistant can help kind of potentially
Mhm.
scale the efforts there, and that does lead you to the logical conclusion, which is if the question is just binary, can you just not have an SDR function? If you have that mentality, then maybe the answer is no. You still need some SDRs because they still play a valuable role to be able to do that triage and make sure that you aren't. They're more just kind of like keeping maybe the AI in check at that point.
Right. Yeah. It might be a
Um,
different type of person, which we've
a
talked
different
about in the
type of person,
past,
like a growth, like people
like a
talked about,
growth
like
marketer,
yeah, exactly,
GTM. Yeah,
or even a
exactly.
go-to-market ops person,
Yeah.
right?
Uh huh.
So yeah, I
Okay.
think
But
that's important. The next,
yeah, I think the other implication is like, okay, well, what are the changes? Like,
right,
what does this
the
mean to the
technical
sales
changes.
process?
Mm-hmm.
And also what could happen with like the sales process that would change?
Yeah, so then maybe I'll get back to kind of the actual examples that the two clients we were working with through this. They're both in this stage where, they haven't quite, for the inbound. So say if someone does demo request, someone's kind of ready for sales. Now there needs to be some kind of triage there. There needs to be
Hmm.
meeting booking and everything. And the tools kind of maybe close to being at that level. They're not quite at the level where you can just be like, okay, handle every inbound, triage it, make sure it's good, book the meeting, get it in the calendar, and there's just no human involved. So then, but they've let go of the SDR team.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? Now they're expecting AEs to handle some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember ever since we've been doing this, we've been doing this, 13, 14 years, even if it wasn't stopping SDRs as a function, there's always been this thing like the best leads should go to the AEs, or like the target accounts should go straight to AEs or everything. And it always sounds really good in theory. It's like,
Yeah.
best people matched with the best leads, it's going to be an instant sale. But what happens is your best leads go to the person that doesn't care about leads.
Right. Or have the time because
I'll
they're
have the
so
time. They're
focused
trying to
on
close
revenue.
deals. They
Deals.
don't get followed up on.
Yeah.
And I wish it wasn't the case, because I love it. Sounds so good in theory. But have you ever seen a situation where the
No.
SLAs were met, where the leads didn't just sit there to die? Have
No.
you ever seen it work? Like,
No, I
well,
even had to when I worked in house, I had to literally convince everyone I needed an SDR team at that time because no, none of the AEs were doing what they were meant to do, and then I had to end up, managing that team. But yeah, I mean, even when you do as much training, SLAs, alerting, dashboards, it just, I mean, there could be exceptions, especially if the
right.
volume's low. But even then, our volume wasn't massive, and we still struggled.
And I know I came off pretty strong there. It's never worked. Maybe it will work. Maybe there's two clients that we're going through this, we can figure out a way to actually get AEs to do it, or maybe there's a different category of AE that has to do it, or maybe it is so low volume because you're only handing over like those that are perfect fit demo requests. So
Yeah.
maybe like not work is too binary. It's like but it's if there's a continuum and you can kind of be in the not working category, but like sometimes it's working, that's probably where most clients will end up.
Yeah.
But
Or you need to incentivize them somehow.
yes,
Because sometimes that's just the wrong thing. There's no
well, they should be
structure.
incentivized by closing deals, right? I mean, that's the only
Yeah,
incentive
but
structure for a salesperson, and hopefully, if they get this person in. But the problem is potentially if there's a long sales cycle.
exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot to unpack there, and maybe we can figure out how to get it to work. But with now these development of the AI tools, maybe that can, maybe you can, maybe it's going to be fine. You can not have an SDR function, particularly if you're really trying to save costs, get more efficient, blah blah blah. Then you try to hand everything to AEs while you develop this AI muscle to figure out the best way to fill the gap where AEs aren't doing the job of that triaging and kind of early top of funnel activities that sales needs to do.
Yeah.
So that is where maybe I have hope that in the future this potentially could work. But again, it is an implication, and it's the reason why I wouldn't just rush in for every company and just say like this is something you can just rush in to do. Really think about it, because if you haven't already tested and got this whole system working, there's going to probably be an awkward time where you actually lose some deals because sales isn't following up on them.
True. Yeah. And then I feel like that brings up now going to a reporting standpoint, or something that we also just see in general with sales engagement platforms, is now you have all of these people that are being followed up with by or start working them. And when we track our funnel, well, if someone goes into a working status or stage, they're in the funnel now. But should you do that with an AI, or was it
Yeah,
only relevant when it was a real person?
I think you should.
You should.
Yeah, and so this is something else we've been debating around some of these clients going through this. I would argue that if an AI is working someone, you still want to start tracking that. So if everyone's listened to other podcasts around our custom object tracking,
Yeah.
where you have a one-to-many relationship between kind of the funnel journeys they can go through and then the lead and contact, you should create a record when AI starts working them, even if it's outbound. And then track the progression. Did that turn into a meeting? Did that turn into pipeline, etc.? But you would want a way to distinguish those records. If it's a true kind of like AI is actually kind of really powering this process, you would want some way to distinguish those records against other ones, just because I'd want to know, like, okay, what was our conversion rate when SDRs did this versus AI? Right?
And
that could help you make a decision either way. So like run a pilot, let AI do this for a bit. Does it convert higher, or is it, or equally as SDRs? If so, maybe that helps you make the decision. If it doesn't, maybe it helps you not make the decision.
Yeah. And we do that usually on our funnel, where we can track like the user and the user type for who, started working it, who created the meeting and whatnot. I would suggest.
Well, the thing that gets really confusing though is when it's owned by the salesperson.
That's why I think
AI is pretending to be that salesperson.
So I think you need to modify your rules and try and look at, okay, well, what is logging the activities, or what is some way that you can actually see if this is AI doing it, not just the person.
Yeah. So. And then there's kind of like a Venn diagram overlap between what you would normally expect from just like a email sequencing tool, where you've kind of predetermined what those emails are, versus AI. And that's where potentially the identifier could just be, kind of like you would have like an outreach sequence name on the lifecycle record to be able to see like, hey, what sequence was this person in?
Totally.
You could have a similar thing for AI, and you'd be able to see, okay, well, this one was handled by our outreach sequencing, this one was done by our AI emailing tool, and now I can see the conversion rates in between the two and be able to optimize from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot more stuff that we could talk about here. We'll talk about it in other podcasts. We're learning a lot actually going through this now. I think the most interesting thing is we're actually doing it for our clients. We're actually trying to figure this out for clients, and it's not just a pipe dream anymore. It's like, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and figure out how to do this.
It's not just